Hi and welcome to my second game coverage here of the World Chess Championship in Chennai 2013. Well, everyone was curious about Anand's first move. I mean, most of us know that Anand is more a e4 player than a d4 player, but I mean, even Topalov he managed to surprise with first d4, and Catalan, which was I think at that time. At least for Anand, a novelty. He never played the Catalan before. At least I cannot recall a game. Yeah, but okay. No, Anand knows how to play first e4, first d4, but it was more likely that he will play e4, which Carlsen certainly expected because he almost blitzed all the moves. I mean, I think even towards the end of the game, he only used 25 minutes. I think it was 25 minutes or half an hour for the whole game, which is incredible for a World Chess Championship. And so after first e4, which seemingly did not came as a surprise for Carlsen, he almost immediately answered first c6, which is an indication that the game will most likely transpose to become a Caro-Kann after d4, taking the center, d5, which is the point of Black's first move to prepare this d5 push. And well, in the live coverage and the video, Anand seemed to be surprised by Carlsen's choice, and otherwise I would have expected him to play something like e5, which he used in his match against Shirov. I think from Rice's point of view, and it was also quite interesting here. Knight c3 is the classical setup. You can also start with knight bd2, which is also reaches the same position after takes. So there's just a transposition. D takes c4, knight takes c4, and Black once again he has this very square which both pieces have to use. Because the bishop, if he wants to go out, he has to cross d7. The knight can go to a6, but sooner or later, something like bishop takes a6 might come, spoiling the structure, and this might be a bit unpleasant. So Black uses the fact that this knight on e4 is unprotected and attacks it by developing a piece, bishop f5. The knight retreats using the fact that this bishop is unprotected. The bishop retreats to g6. And okay, now there are certain possibilities. You can place the bishop to c4. You can also play something which Carlsen I think used in Vaikanze this year, which is knight ge2 f4 to gain the bishop pair. Also kind of an interesting idea. But the most common move here is h4. After h4, h6, because white was threatening h5. Black simply creates a Luftloch here. For example, if now h5, then bishop h7, and the bishop is relatively safe there. And this pawn might be a weakness later on, especially after knight f6. Already keeping an eye on this. So kingside castling means that there's some tension going on. So knight f3 came, which is also the main line. And now the first slightly odd decision by Carlsen, because normally you start with knight bd7 with the idea that one of white's ideas is to play knight e5, hitting this bishop, forcing it to retreat while improving the knight, and only then to play bishop d3 and change it off. But okay, if the knight goes to e5 now, we just take, spoil castling, maybe even castle queenside, immediately hitting this king. If he goes back, the pawn on c2 is hanging. Also, this pawn is a weakness, and so you'll probably have to play something like bishop d2. But after, let's just say probably something like e6. I mean, this pawn is always a weakness, and otherwise something like knight to d5, for example, is quite a good move, and black is probably just already slightly better here. So that's one idea of knight d7 to prevent this. So knight d5 is not possible. So e6 came, which is a bit surprising, because it actually allows this very knight move here to e5. Usually, I mean, there are two moves which are played in this position. The one is without h5, the other is with this move included, h5. Just simply because if the bishop goes to e7 later on, either with a in-between stop on b4 to force c3, he will have additional pressure against this pawn here later on. So white moves this pawn, gains space with time, hitting the bishop. Something like bishop f5 is not ideal, and something not he wants, because it could just take. And if he retreats, he will then maybe play something like bishop d3 and get an improved version. But knight d5 and immediately without h5 is the other option which white can play. It's just a nuance in the position. And okay, certainly, I mean, after knight e7, white scores excellently, something like bishop c4, or most common move knight takes g6, and it's just as a very pleasant position. So bishop h7, bishop d3, because the bishop is quite annoying on this diagonal here. Bishop takes, queen takes, knight bd7. In a way threatening to play, let me just include it, a certain way threatening to take here, and if he recaptures, to take, castle queenside, and immediately starting to besiege this pawn here. Maybe he could even try something like bishop b4 check first, in order, I don't know, maybe something like this. But I mean, if you are attacking, you maybe want an additional attacker, especially if this pawn once moves to d4 on the dark square. Might come in handy. But okay, f4, which is the difference between this line and the immediate knight bd7, because white has time for f4. And well, if he now recaptures, he could recapture with the f pawn. And if he recaptures with the f pawn, for example, if he takes, f takes, because otherwise if he takes with the d pawn, we again have this very structure with just a backward pawn for black, for white, and I mean position should be better for white, for black. And if he captures with the f pawn, he has no more space here, especially if h5 comes. And after cancelling, there's already some pressure against the f7 pawn, and this is annoying. This is certainly just annoying for black here. So of course he didn't take, but played bishop b4 with this, which is a common maneuver in Caro-Kann positions, because first of all you give white a choice. Shall he play bishop d2, or shall he play c3? I mean, first of all, it's just a choice, so you are forced to think. And secondly, now if this comes, he might consider something like queen a5, or to take, and maybe something like knight f6, for example. This is just a possible line here. With c3, which is probably the most common move here, let me just check it out. c3 is the most common move, yeah, even. Hitting the bishop, and there are two squares. Bishop d6 is played, but also bishop e7. Bishop e7 is the most common move here, and also played by something like Ding Diren and Ulyanov, for example, Korneev. Bishop e7 goes back. Normal development. Bishop d2, preparing queenside castling, because white has this play here on the kingside going on, and if he castles there, those two pawns are just weak. Actually, in fact, this pawn is just hanging, so which isn't very good. The reason being that if he takes there on h4, which wasn't played before, I guess there's a problem with this move here. First of all, if the queen takes, it just hangs the bishop. And if the bishop takes in between, the queen recaptures. And you will make sure to regain the pawn. The piece is lost, so you have to recapture. After queen takes g7, well, it's even, completely busted. I mean, the rook is hanging, the knight is hanging. Black simply losing here. So I guess it's about due to knight d7. The only way to justify this is to play king takes d7. But after something like, well, probably just queenside castling, followed by something like knight e4, and there he gets good play. If he gives up the bishop, there's pressure against this pawn. If he goes there, I mean, I think he's just have long-term prospects. I'm not quite sure. Didn't check with an engine yet, but looks okay for white. I mean, he has some pressure at least. This bishop is bad, but maybe he can try to reactivate it. Let me see. Maybe instead of castling queenside. Well, looks like the most natural move. Otherwise, let's see, knight takes f7 is, I think, not very good. I mean, if the king takes, you don't have a check, and you just sack the piece. The next is knight f6, and maybe rook f8, king g8, and okay. What else? Maybe immediately queenside castling. I mean, at least you're up in development, and maybe this can compensate for the pawn. I mean, if black takes, you always have this pressure against those two pawns. And yeah, I don't know. It looks okay. I mean, I don't know if it's enough, but it looks okay. The move played by Carlsen was knight gf6, which is also the main line here. There were one game which continued queen e2, which was even Anand against Ding Liren. So he had this position already on the board. It was in 2013 in Paris and St. Petersburg, where the game continued c5, d takes c5, queen c7, b4, keeping the pawn, castle, castle, a5, a3, and so on. After which Anand won the game. Now he played a novelty. Sorry, not a novelty. For him, a novelty, because he never used this move before. He played queenside castling. So just finishing development, and now leaving black with the option of, do you prepare queenside castling? After which, of course, this knight has some pressure on f7. Or do you castle short, which leads to at least a double-edged character, because both sides will probably attack on the other wing. And here after castle, knight e4, I think is okay. I mean, it's the highest scoring move for white. Other moves include the knight to queen f3, but I think black should be doing well after queen c7, just preparing c5. And this lineup here is a bit dangerous. I mean, especially if the c file opens up. But knight e4 is okay. But drawback of this move is that it gives black the option of just eliminating all the pieces here. Takes, and I expect something like knight f6 here, but because knight takes e5 at least looks a bit risky. After f takes e4, this position was reached in only one game between players rated about 400 to 200, and I mean, what I didn't like about this position, which was the reason I didn't expect this double capture, so on e4 and e5, was that this space advantage here, I mean, he has maybe some play here, maybe later on h5 and something like this. It might be that black is doing fine. For example, if h5 comes, you might exchange off the bishop here. But on the other hand, this bishop here might be a bad piece, but I'm not sure with the move h6 included that this bishop might not have even some prospect sacrificing itself on h6, which looks very, very dangerous. Especially, let's say something like queen g4 already sets this threat of capturing on h6, and I don't know, maybe even some rook lifts here might launch an attack. But okay, queen d5, which was played. First of all, questioning the queen. Secondly, if the queen moves, eyeing this pawn, and at the same time threatening the pawn on a2. And now comes a real novelty, which was queen takes d5, exchanging the queens. Probably Anand just wanted to save the energy because, I mean, he knows that he knows what he can do, what he's capable of, and I think if he neutralizes the fact that Carlsen has more resources, more energy, I guess he might get the advantage, because then he can try to play full-hearted, so to say. And queen takes d5 is just leading to a normal position. C takes d5, but with a certain unbalanced structure. I thought that black might be even slightly better here, because he has a very typical plan of launching this minority attack here, where you use your 2 pawns against the opponent's 3 pawns to create a weakness, and in the process some play against this. But both players seem to no. I mean, there was a live comment on the internet on playchess.com, I think, where a grandmaster said this minority attack shouldn't be too dangerous in that particular position. What I didn't consider when making my evaluating this plan was that without the queens, it's not so easy to exploit these weaknesses anymore. And it might be that black's position is just okay and white isn't worse by any means. So after h5, b5, rook h3, now that this pawn isn't attacked anymore, the rook can go to g3, pressuring this pawn, adding some pressure, maybe even with the following idea. Rook g3, rook g4, already threatening this. And if the bishop moves, maybe something like rook d3, rook g3, and simply adding pressure to this pawn. It might be that this was one of their intentions. Especially since this lineup might be very, very dangerous. So for example, let's just move something. Let's say this already puts up the threat of bishop takes h6, because the pawn on g7 is pinned. If he, let's say, moves, and yeah, let's just play some moves, okay? I mean, of course, it's not valid, but let's just play some moves out here. This might be a long-term plan. Of course, very slow, but let's say after this, if black sets up, I don't know, if he tries to generate some other play, the pressure against the pawn is a bit annoying, and if something like this, I'm not sure. I mean, this looks very dangerous, but it might be that this square here saves the day. Something like this. Because if the bishop wouldn't be there, it would be mate. This might be that this defensive setup might actually prevent all white attacking ideas. Because trying to defend like this should be worse. First of all, we are sometimes threatening to take there. If bishop takes f8 to protect this pawn, then actually bishop takes h6 is possible, because this rook would be hanging. But otherwise, I think the setup with a bishop on f8 covering the square on g7 prevents any mate, and if the rook goes to c8, this attack might be just hot air. So a5, rook f1, rook a to c8, rook g3, king h7, rook g to h3, putting pressure on this pawn, using the space advantage. The king goes back, and the position repeats. Rook g3. Again, hitting this pawn, threatening bishop takes h6, and the pawn cannot recapture. King h7, rook gf3, and with a repetition of moves. The only way to continue would be probably to play something like this, but it looks extremely dangerous, and I'm not sure if this would have been a wise decision by Carlsen. Otherwise, the draw is a natural outcome here. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to the third game. I mean, tomorrow there's a rest day, I think, because each third day is a rest day, and the games continue on Tuesday. So I'm looking forward for white, for Magnus playing white again. I have a theory. Maybe he's switching openings all the times. You know, he never plays an opening twice in this match. Maybe I'm right. Let's see. It would be extremely interesting because this would definitely put or throw Anand out of his preparation. I mean, his team is probably now analyzing, by now the game already finished in a draw, but probably analyzing lines against the Caro-Kann. And if Magnus in 4 days or 3 days chooses, I don't know, the French, for example, or maybe even the open defense, or Lopez, or Sicilian, or Scandinavian even, it would be very, very interesting an interesting way to put pressure on Anand's team, because in a certain way they would be forced to prepare for everything, and to prepare for everything and be prepared for everything in each game would put pressure on Anand in the long run. So while he saves his time towards the end of the match, it might be that the amount of information which he has to store in his brain might be something that could even finally decide the outcome of this match. So it's quite interesting, also a psychological battle, and I'm definitely looking forward for the next rounds. Thanks for watching.